3 years after the outbreak of the pandemic, and many countries around the world have now returned to a new normal, as COVID-related restrictions have eased and business is back to usual. In China, however, brutal lockdowns, apartment buildings being barricaded, and starvation due to movement restrictions continue to torment ordinary Chinese citizens. China adopted the debilitating zero-COVID strategy, which aims to curtail COVID cases with draconian measures and strict lockdowns. This approach, however, is unsustainable and has sparked outrage across China. For the first time in years, protests were held throughout China's major cities denouncing the CCP's COVID strategy and the regime in general. Let's take a look at how Beijing's flawed pandemic management strategy united the country against the Chinese Communist Party.
Xi Jinping! Xi Jinping!
Demonstrators in Shanghai chanted such slogans in a rare display of rage against President Xi Jinping's government. Damaging the livelihoods of 1.4 billion people, China's COVID restrictions angered people throughout the country, causing them to take to the streets to express their discontent with the regime. From Zhengzhou in the Henan province to Guangzhou in South China, protesters took to the streets and called for President Xi Jinping to step down. Inspired by the bravery of the protesters in China, Chinese living on foreign soil also organized themselves to speak out against Beijing's policy of citywide lockdowns, mass testing, and enforced quarantines.
Xi Jinping! Xi Jinping!
You know, a lot of protests, occurred in China. The Chinese people suffered from the zero COVID policy, and some Chinese, died for such kind of policy. So the Chinese cannot, afford such a policy continue.
Following the widespread demonstrations inside and outside of China, several cities in the country announced the easing of lockdown regulations. For Beijing, which had moved quickly to suppress demonstrations, the public anger proved to be an unprecedented challenge. Attempting to dispel any notion of public discontent with the CCP, the government was quick to accuse foreigners of inciting the street demonstrations. This type of response was not unexpected, given the CCP's history of refusing to entertain any criticism of its policies or governance. In addition to imprisoning ordinary Chinese citizens in their homes, China's zero-COVID policy has affected key sectors of its economy, which has already borne the brunt of the country's weak growth in the first half of this year. Real estate development, which has always been an important driver of economic growth in China, is also facing a huge loss. The Chinese stock market and the yuan have taken big hits, with experts opining that China's economy is not poised for a quick recovery, even if COVID restrictions were to end.
Companies may find it very difficult for them, those who have gone out, to further repose their faith in the Chinese regime. Political regime matters if you have to invest. So in that case, I will say that zero COVID policy have actually tarnished the image of the Communist Party there.
Experts have cautioned that the current COVID outbreak in China could be a breeding ground for new variants. However, the draconian zero-COVID strategy is not sustainable. Earlier, UN health agency officials have said that measures to tackle COVID outbreaks should also show respect for human rights. China has clearly not heeded this advice in formulating its COVID management strategies. What is clear, however, is that ordinary Chinese citizens have reached their limit in tolerance of the CCP's attempts at total control of the population. The world is watching as brave Chinese publicly show their discontent with President Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan has announced an end to their truce with the Pakistani government. This has triggered a severe security concern in an already highly volatile country. The Taliban has claimed that its armed fighters are ready to take revenge against Pakistani security forces and government installations that it blames for targeting ordinary Afghans. This poses a challenge to the newly appointed army chief, General Asim Munir, as the TTP has accused the Pakistani army and intelligence agencies of relentless operations in violation of their previous truce. The TTP said it had exercised restraint for too long to keep the negotiation process on track, but the Pakistani government didn't honor their side of the agreement.
This was inevitable because the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan has been using negotiations essentially as a tactical ploy. They have declared the Pakistan state murtad, it is an apostate state. It is an un-Islamic state and it has to be destroyed. This is part of their ideological foundation. And they are committed to the establishment of a Sharia-based state in Pakistan.
The Pakistani Taliban have already begun spilling blood. A suicide bomber recently exploded his explosive-laden rickshaw near a police truck in Balochistan's Quetta city. A police officer and 3 civilians were killed, and 24 others were seriously injured in the attack claimed by the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. In another incident, the Pakistan embassy in Kabul was also attacked, allegedly by the TTP. A Pakistani security guard was wounded by shots fired at the embassy by a lone attacker. While condemning the incident, Islamabad called it an assassination attempt on the head of the mission, Ubaid-ur Rehman Nizamani. The challenges are infinite, as Islamabad has failed to adequately deal with terror groups in the country. For decades, the Pakistani army has trained and financed many designated terrorist organizations. Now, the country faces high threats from homegrown terrorists.
The Pakistan army has also sought a peaceful settlement with the TTP. They want to absorb them into the system. Now, prior to the Lal Masjid crisis under Musharraf, certainly the Lal Masjid orthodoxy was supported by the army at that time. But when the army eventually attacked Lal Masjid, killed one of the top leaders in Lal Masjid, that was the source of the foundation of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan.
The Taliban's takeover in Kabul of last year has strengthened the Pakistani Taliban, who remain eager to continue their fight in the country. The Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, headed by Mufti Nur Wali Masood, has been encouraged by the Afghan Taliban's victory over foreign forces. It is now hopeful that it too will be able to defeat the Pakistani government and establish Islamic rule throughout the country. Pakistan, already severely economically and politically unstable, is in a weak position to deal with terrorist groups within its territory. Many are left wondering what will transpire next. Will the Pakistani government revive the negotiation process with the TTP, or ask its army to intensify operations against the Taliban fighters? The stakes are high, however, and in either scenario, the Pakistani people will continue to bear the brunt of this violence.